Chapter 2. A Sword to Change the World. Calysta sat up in her bed. It was 10 minutes until her alarm was set to go off. An unfortunate turn of events. She rubbed her head, wincing as her fingers snagged her mane of bedhead. Looking out at the rays of golden light shining through her window, Calysta felt hope for the day. Today won't be so bad. Calysta thought to herself as she stood up and stretched. Her limbs still ached from her volunteer work the day prior. Calysta put a news podcast onto her phone as she got dressed. It was a good way to catch up on the events of the past day while preparing for school. The podcast spoke of an incident the previous day where a grocery store was held up at gunpoint. Calysta felt sadness for the people who had to endure such an event, but she was pleased to know that it didn't result in the deaths of any civilians. According to the podcast, the criminals had been killed with little explanation. Calysta wondered if they could have turned their lives around and repented if they had been given the chance, if they had been peacefully brought to justice. Putting her blonde hair up in a long ponytail, Calysta snatched up her backpack from the chair in the right-hand corner of her messy room. She had asked for the chair with the intent to read in it before bed. But over the weeks, it had just become a clutter zone. Marching down the staircase into the living room, Calysta gripped the doorknob before looking back at her mother, who was sitting at the dining room table. She had her laptop, something work-related, no doubt. "I'm leaving, Mom. I'll be home around 4, Calysta announced. "Be safe and don't get distracted," her mother said in a kind but warning tone. Calysta did have to admit she had a habit of becoming involved in various situations, but she just wanted to be helpful. "Don't worry, none of the clubs or teams are meeting today, so they shouldn't ask me for help," Calysta said as she opened the door. She wasn't part of any clubs, but when they had grunt work, they asked her. In truth, she knew they asked because they knew she'd agree. But what is a life without helping others? Calysta took her mother's silence as her cue to leave. The wind blew at her newly brushed hair as she walked down the steps of her porch. It was a pleasant windy day, but she saw clouds on the horizon. "I hope it rains. The grass could use it." As she strolled down the sidewalks on this blustery day, she waved to passersby she knew and hummed a tune of her own invention. Calysta cut through an alley to save time on her path to school. She would be early, but it gave her time to offer her assistance to teachers who were still setting up for class. Calysta enjoyed helping others. She enjoyed the way it made her feel, and loved knowing that her assistance helped secure the best possible results for everyone's day. Trash covered the old pathway, an old cement road that had fallen into disrepair. "Maybe I'll come back on my way home and pick it up a bit," Calysta thought to herself as she watched a little boy in a blue striped shirt bouncing a ball on the cement floor of the alley. The boy was young, probably too young for school, and certainly too young to be outside playing on his own without supervision. Calysta hoped the boy's parents were watching from some hidden window. Calysta watched the boy from afar, still a few yards from him, but the sound of trash cans being bulldozed in a connecting alley alerted Calysta that something was erroneous. Calysta lunged for the boy, her hand outstretched to the boy as a car moved into view. A lead-footed driver haphazardly flying straight at the child. He'll never be able to stop in time. The car drew closer, its bumper almost close enough to touch Calysta and the boy. Her hand a mere inch or two from the innocent child, as each second felt like a minute. "I need to save him." As the tip of Calysta's finger grazed the boy's shirt, things went dark, and she felt like the world around her became numb. Calysta bolted upright, fear and adrenaline pulsing through her. Around her she saw a world of glass flora with a castle in the center of the massive but finite round space. "So I died," Calysta said to herself with a sigh. "I hope that kid ended up safe." In truth, though, she was sad for her mother. If she happened to save that child, then she didn't have any regrets. Standing up, Calysta didn't notice any cracking from the fragile reflective grass beneath her. She didn't even feel them beneath her feet. Calysta took another step to confirm the event hadn't been a glitch in the matrix, and upon a third step, she was satisfied her steps left no damage to the world around her. If I'm bound to a place for the rest of eternity, I'm at least glad it's somewhere as beautiful as this, Calysta said with a content sigh as she briefly thought about all the wonders that child's life might hold for him, a life she might have saved. God, I hope he survived, Calysta thought as her stomach filled with lead.
He won't.
A thought that wasn't her own whispered into her head. The mental voice sounded delicate and feminine. He won't? Calysta couldn't help but blurt out. I can't remember pushing him out of the way of the car, but I thought that was just the trauma from being hit by it. Calysta took a handful of steps toward the castle. She couldn't explain it, but it felt like the voice in her mind had come from that direction. Won't. Like, it hasn't happened yet. Calysta walked at a hurried pace towards the castle as she tried to place the few pieces of this puzzle she had custody of.
Within you beats the heart of a king, one that can change the world with their actions. You may still be able to save the boy.
A different voice this time, a stern-sounding male. Calysta ran through the gate of the castle and into a dazzling great hall, weapons along with other objects hanging from the walls. But the voices came from far deeper within the structure. Show me how to save him! Calysta yelled for whatever beings had dominion over this world to hear.
You must choose. The choice to mold the world to your liking is and forever shall be yours.
A female voice spoke up once more. It sounded as if it was on a lower level of the castle. A basement? Calysta looked around the extravagant hall. Before her, nuzzled between two curved staircases, headed upstairs, was the top of a spiral staircase heading in the opposite direction. I choose to do it, whatever spares him. Calysta yelled once more, moving down the staircase as quickly as she could manage without wiping out and falling down its full length. Reaching the bottom of the staircase, Calysta found herself in a sound space, a rhine surrounding a bottomless pit with a smaller round platform in the center of the pit, one of stone rather than the shining glassy material that everything else was made of.
Then choose, Calysta, she-bear Brenhinleys.
The voices said simultaneously. The two voices came from the central platform, the only path to which was a narrow bridge. The multicolored light from the chamber's stained glass windows painting the room in a kaleidoscopic radiance. Calysta ran to the bridge, and after a brief moment of hesitation, she sprinted down the bridge. She didn't give her own health a second thought. But if she could save a child, an innocent, she would do whatever it takes. Calysta stopped on the circular stone platform. Upon it were two gray swords embedded in stone pedestals, with the statue of an angel towering over the blades.
Choose. I, Clarent, I was Arthur Pendragon's sword of peace and protection. I seek to protect all within my domain and detest death.
The male voice came from the sword on the right, a sword that Calysta thought might have been black and gold at one time, before its current, lifeless gray had taken it.
Or choose me, Excalibur. I was Arthur Pendragon's sword of conquest. I seek to change the world and mold it into a world worth presiding over.
The female voice radiated from the sword on the left. Like the other, Calysta felt the colors the sword formerly boasted, white and gold. The power to protect, or the power to pursue a world where everyone is protected and safe. I want to protect him, but with the power Excalibur boasted, I might be able to safeguard everyone. Calysta said to herself as she approached the pair of pedestals, grazing a hand across each of their hilts. She saw two paths. To protect a select few, a path she liked and wouldn't shame anyone for picking, or the path to protect everyone, no matter the trials she faced. Let's change the world, she said, as she grasped Excalibur's hilt with both of her hands. I'm ready, Excalibur. Let's save that kid, Calysta said as she pulled up on Excalibur. And as the sword was excavated from its stone prison, the world around her went white. As Calysta again became aware, she found herself midway through the jump to save the boy. her hand still reaching out to save his life. "Excalibur, please!" Calysta thought with every fiber of her being. And as if in response, a warmth flooded her eyes as an unseen force launched her forward, leaving her barely enough time to grab the child, but nowhere near enough time to prevent her and her protege from plummeting into a trash can on the other side of the alley, dirty but safe from harm. "Ew," the boy said. "Ew is right," Calysta agreed as she saw two police cars zip by, chasing after the car that had just left the alley. After struggling for a handful of moments, Calysta sighed in defeat, met with the sad reality that she was stuck in the trash can. Being the chosen heroine is less glorious than I would have thought, she thought.
Arthur didn't always find his duty tasteful, either.
The soft melody of Excalibur's voice sounded within her mind. But did Arthur find himself covered in week-old spaghetti? Calysta retorted as she looked at the child on her lap, the child she had saved and was now looking up at her.
"Far worse,"
Excalibur replied, sending a feeling of amusement through their bond. As Calysta digested Excalibur's words, her mind running through the possibilities of what could have befallen Arthur, she felt a hand on hers. Looking over, she was a pretty brown-haired woman that shared the boy's eyes. "Let's get you two out of that trash bin," the teary-eyed woman said with gratitude and sympathy in her tone. Nodding, Calysta shifted her weight as the woman pulled, freeing her from her filthy prison. "I'm glad that arc of my story is over," Calysta announced with vigor, looking over at the woman to thank her for her assistance, but receiving a tight embrace from her instead, the sounds of her weeping audible for all to hear. "Thank you for saving my baby," the woman wheezed, the hug threatening to crush Calysta. "You were watching?" she asked, half worrying the woman's fierce embrace might end her tale early. "I was. Thank you so much for saving him. I don't know what I would have done if I had lost him," the woman said as she finally released Calysta, and looking upon the grateful woman and child, Calysta knew this was enough. "It was the least I could do. I'm happy I could help," Calysta said, presenting her best smile for the two. The first two she had protected out of the countless she would save in the future. "Gotta go, I have school to head to," Calysta said, rubbing the boy on the head. "If you ever need anything, I'll do whatever I can," the woman said as Calysta turned to leave. Turning to give the pair one last look, she was pleased to the very core of her soul to see the difference she had made.